Well, it's officially the preseason again. The offseason is the preseason in college basketball. It never stops, does it, Brad? Great national championship game last night that we all enjoyed. So much for such an unsexy matchup. It was one of the most high-scoring national championship games in recent history. It was a lot of fun. It went to overtime, and Virginia cuts down the nets. And for my money, one of the better storylines in all of really college sports and all of sports history in terms of redemption. And so great game last night, Brad. Before we get into this podcast, which we're going to focus on player movement and coaching changes, because we haven't been able to talk about them, talking about the tournament every week. We did want to get to that and bring you a second pod for the week. So a lot to talk about, but we'll start with the championship game, Brad, before we get too far. Obviously, we were both watching intently. First off, just an outstanding basketball game.
Absolutely. And I mean, the generationally unsexy comment was extreme hyperbole. But I mean, the casual viewer, was not interested in this matchup. Obviously, college basketball fans were super interested. I mean, really, college basketball fans are interested in every championship game matchup. The ratings were pretty good. A lot of people were mentioning that they were like the third lowest since 2000 or whatever. But you have to keep in mind that everything in a TV is declining because people are cutting cable. So I think it was the ratings were fine. I saw that they outdrew Game 7 of both the Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals from last year. So I think enough viewers tuned in where it wasn't such a turn off, the sexiness, but I was very surprised to see that it was one of the highest scoring games. I know people gave me flack when I predicted it, John Rothstein tweeted, like, if you predict the exact score, you'll get a year's supply of body armor, the sports drink. So I figured I'd throw my name in the ring, give a score, and I said 70-68 Virginia. People gave me flack. It was 68-68, and then Giacchite threw the outlet pass out of bounds. I mean, if they could have gone and gotten a 2 there, they had about 4 seconds, I would have had a year's supply of a sports drink that I don't even really like.
Yeah, that's the real storyline of last night with Brad's flirtations with a new sports drink. Unfortunately, not to be. I mean, I just thought it was so fun because both teams hit so many big shots. I think a lot of college basketball games become exciting down the stretch, but it's kind of a limp to the finish where neither team can get a bucket. And I think we could have expected that in a game like this where two defenses were so dominant, especially Virginia wasn't playing a lot of bench guys, so they had to be wearing down. And it really wasn't the case. I mean, Ty Jerome made play after play, creating open shots. And especially that pass across the court to Hunter for the 3 that tied the game at 68 was absurd. He was so phenomenal this weekend, just an absolutely terrific player. Hunter stepped up in the second half after struggling on the first. Culver looked a lot better in the second half and overtime as well. I was very unimpressed by Jarrett Culver's draft prospects for much of this weekend, and DeAndre Hunter to a lesser extent, but really Culver's. And I thought Culver answered the bell in the second half, even though I don't still love him as a prospect. I thought he played really well. I thought Kyler Edwards was terrific. Obviously, Brandon Francis hit some big shots. Mooney, was clutch, and Moretti was solid. I mean, it was just two teams going at it with tough shot makers, and Diakite was impactful until he threw the ball out of bounds. I mean, I feel like that play didn't get quite enough attention for, like, if Texas Tech wins that game, that's a Chris Webber calling a timeout moment. And that is a unforgettable sports moment of a guy just throwing the ball out of bounds.
Yeah, and it was tough to blame Giacchite because, I guess you should have just held it and called timeout immediately. I think your first thought is we have 4 seconds. Let's get the ball up the floor. And I think I'm not 100% certain on this. You have to rewind the tape, but it seemed like Guy called for the timeout before Giacchite threw the pass. But I agree. The announcers weren't really playing it up as like this, crazy error that they just gave the ball back to Texas Tech on their own side of the court, for a last second shot. And then in terms of Hunter and Culver, Culver he just feels like a late lottery type of player, despite being at this point almost a consensus top 5 player on draft boards. I think the weakness of this draft is going to slide him up a little bit. I still think 5 is too high. He seems like he could be like a good starter, but not a difference maker like you would like with the number 5 pick.
Yeah,
Hunter, obviously great defender, versatile. He looks so much better when he's not doing his the Zach Randolph, like the catch the ball in the mid post, jab step, fire up a contested 18-footer. That's when he really looks exposed. It seems like he's not quick enough to get by someone because he's settling like that. But we saw a couple times him putting the ball down from the high post and getting to the rim. We saw him hit a few threes and just an overall very strong championship game from him.
Yeah, I thought Hunter was terrific. In the second half, I think with Culver, he just feels kind of stiff to me, right? Like the billing is like he's this like athlete, and he looks the part. Certainly, he's got the big, bulky, muscular legs and the long arms and the ability to play multiple positions. But like he doesn't, his athleticism doesn't play in my mind. And he's not a very good shooter. He's not a very good ball handler. I think he'll defend and I think he'll slash, but I guess my question is would you rather have drafted Mikal Bridges or Jarrett Culver?
I think Culver has more upside. I think Culver is a better passer, but Bridges had a good floor game too. Bridges was also, I don't know about years older, but he was 2 grades older.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm not saying you have to balance the upside and stuff, but I think for me, I think the floor for Mikal Bridges is a lot higher than Culver's. I think Culver could fringe onto bust territory if he doesn't improve as a shooter.
Yeah, especially because he's not an explosive athlete.
Right. He's gotten so much better, and I think that's also something you can bet on. Is like Jarrett Culver in high school, then Jarrett Culver year 1 at Tech, then Jarrett Culver year 2 at Tech is like a steady incline. And I think you can bet on that to a certain degree. But, I mean, at some point, I want to see it in a game. And I was not super sold on him as a prospect. We could talk about these guys as prospects, though, all day. I mean, I thought Jerome looked like I would draft Ty Jerome in the first round.
Yeah, I think around the right pieces, I mean, he's super interesting. I think maybe next to a ball dominant wing, or because I don't know if you want him to be your full-time point guard, but I think off ball as a glue guy, kind of ball mover type, who can also hit threes and make plays. I think he makes a lot of sense. He kind of has a little Lonzo in him.
I was almost thinking you pair him with Alonzo type, where both guys can have the ball. Jerome can be the spot up shooter and crafty. Lonzo can be athletic and get to the rim and defend. I was almost thinking you could build a backcourt of Ty and Lonzo.
I could see that, but then maybe you would need a LeBron, or a Paul George, or
you'd need a really good wing scorer for sure. But I mean, I think that'd be a fun backcourt. But
yeah, guys in the Jerome vein get picked in the second round all the time, and then either get some surprise starts, or they're rotation players immediately.
Right. I mean, Jalen Brunson played a fair amount this year. I don't remember if he snuck into the first or not.
He was an early second round, I think. I think he was 34.
32, something like that.
I mean, I think Jerome and Cassius Winston are the 2 biggest dominoes, I think, in terms of the macro view of college basketball, because I think if one leaves and not the other, that team is number 1, right? If Jerome leaves and Winston stays, Michigan State's number 1, and vice versa. And then if both leave, I mean, we're opening the floodgates, right? But between Michigan losing Brazdeikis, maybe even Poole too, Kentucky could lose Tyler Hero, and then who knows? I mean, then it's absolute pandemonium at the top.
I mean, even if Kentucky lost Hero at that point, I think Kentucky would be the number 1 if Jerome and Winston leave, and then Michigan loses Brazdeikis and possibly Poole. I mean, I think you'd have to say that like Kentucky's number one. They still have the backcourt depth. I mean, even losing Washington, they'll still be fine up front. I mean, just kind of a lack of better options type thing, right? Like, who else can you put?
That's the whole top part of the top 25. I've seen so many people with Gonzaga in the top 5 or like top 6, I think usually. I've seen a lot of people with Louisville, right? You had Louisville in the top 10. I've seen people with Villanova. It's like it seems like people are just like, I don't know, but these guys are usually in it. These coaches usually good. I'll put them. But I think with those 3 teams specifically, when you really take a look at their roster, I don't see how they can be ranked. So I mean, it seems like Gonzaga fans just don't care that they don't have a point guard. It's bananas.
Yeah. No, who was it in your mentions that they were saying like the current Gonzaga point guard situation is better than like what Virginia had this year?
Yeah, well, yeah. So he was saying that Brock Rabbit is better than Kihei Clark, which I mean that's not a outlandish take. I mean, Kihei Clark is so good because he plays next to Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome. But I mean, if calling Clark Virginia's point guard is very like very literal. Like Ty Jerome has, I checked on KenPom yesterday, has double the assist rate. He had a 32% assist rate. Clark had a 16% assist rate. The higher usage, he's the primary creator there essentially.
Right.
Whereas Gonzaga, I mean, I don't know Norvell's assist numbers or like creation numbers off the top of my head. He seems to be like more of like a shoot first kind of a 3-point shooter. Kispert's like a spot up guy. I mean, they don't. Norvell averaged 3.1 assists per game, which is more than I anticipated. But I don't see him as a primary creator.
No, definitely not. I think that's a bad situation for the Zags if he is a primary creator for this team. But I mean, we'll see.
I had people saying that. People said this about Gonzaga last year. Like, what are you talking about? Gonzaga was a consensus, top tier team last year with a very good senior point guard.
I mean, people hated on Perkins,
right? But he was a proven and productive player. They hated on him based on like the expectation, right?
Right.
I think even though they're not saying it now, like if you gave them the truth serum, I mean. Perkins or Joel Ayayi, Perkins or Brock Ravet. I mean, they're obviously taking Perkins. But I mean, even last year, we didn't know necessarily that Clark was going to be this good, right? But Hachimura was a preseason All-American. So to act like, now when your best players are Norvell, Tilley, and Kispert, I mean, we're not even in the same stratosphere.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and Norvell, I just looked it up, had an assist rate of 16 and a turnover rate of 12. So, I mean, he's just not a guy you can put the ball in the hands of and be like, run the show. And that's not what he was in high school at Simeon. Like, that would not be a good situation. I mean, they definitely play on other – I guess you could play, like – could you play him and Dazon Ingram? And is that, like, 2 combo guards and that works? I don't know.
I think usually the two combo guards in lieu of a point guard doesn't work. But I mean, I like Ingram. I don't know if I like him as a starting point guard. It's tough because I mean he played point guard early in his career, and I mean Alabama wasn't that good, but they also didn't have an offense. Like Avery Johnson was playing 2 bigs, right? They were this big physical team that dominated the defensive glass. But then they got Colin Sexton, and then they got Kira Lewis. So both those guys are going to play point guard over Ingram, and then the backup point guard was the coach's son, right? So it's. I think Ingram's probably a better point guard than people think. I still don't think you want him as your point guard on a top 25 team, but you can make the tournament with him as your point guard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say he's not. I don't think he's your starting point guard. I think it's a point guard by committee thing where like you have 2 guys who can handle the ball and operate ball screens, and like him and Norvell next to each other, and then you can like bring in like Rivette off the bench if you have to, or like EIE. I mean, I definitely do not think it's like a, oh my God, Dazon Ingram, put the ball in his hands all the time. I remember my preseason hype for Bama 2 years ago was Dazon Ingram off the ball, Colin Sexton ups their offensive efficiency, and it really didn't. It was really just Colin Sexton's an absolute beast, and Avery Johnson still doesn't know how to run an offense.
I mean, if Colin Sexton doesn't score that scooping layup against Texas A&M in the SEC tournament, they are going to the NIT. That was kind of off topic, but the thing I wanted to
Alabama opened. Why don't we start there?
Well, I just wanted to bring up one thing regarding a common retort to my rankings being, but Team X has such a good recruiting class, right? So I went and I looked at the last 5 years of recruiting classes. Now, do you have a guess to what percentage? That's 50 teams, right? Top 10 recruiting classes over 5 years. Out of those 50, how many of those teams did not finish the next season in the top 25?
I'm going to guess 30 because I know it's going to be high.
So it was 22 out of the 50. So
okay.
44%, right? But each of those 5 years, Duke and Kentucky had either one or two, right? And they had these transcendent classes where they load up on all these, so the jump from 2 to 3 is enormous. So if you take out Duke and Kentucky, right? So then you have 40 teams, and 22 of the 40 didn't finish in the top 25, which tells me that there's absolutely no correlation between a top 10 recruiting class and being good that season, right? You see the jumps when you can carry that class over to your sophomore, to your junior, and then if you can keep them together for your senior year, I mean, you could compete for a national title. But I think, a potential reason for this is the teams with the best recruiting classes more often than not have the most turnover in terms of roster.
Right.
So I think the ideal scenario in kind of making a jump and in adding a lot of talent is you already have a few veterans who are really good, and then you throw in 3 or 4 really talented freshmen, guys who are like top 50, top 75, and that mix, the freshmen can kind of be eased in with the veterans. That's kind of what you want to see. But when either the freshmen are all better than the returners, or you need to rely a lot on the freshmen, that you often kind of underperform due to the expectation placed on you by the recruiting class.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree there. I mean, I think, yeah, for the most part, it's really hard for a freshman-dominated team to do it. First off, because I think coaches don't know how to deal with it. Second of all, because recruiting classes rankings are based heavily on like the number of players. So as you said, it does heavily weight towards teams that, add that add like 4 or 5 guys, which means that they're having a lot of turnover. Where I think, for instance, the perfect example of like the ideal situation for, I think, a recruiting class would be Clemson getting Zion last year, right? Like Clemson had Marquise Reed, they had Shelton Mitchell, they had Amir Sims, they had Elijah Thomas. Yeah, like they had a core, and then you just throw in Zion, a 5-star recruit, and then they become elite. That's the jump. But it's not like, oh, Clemson loses their entire team, but then adds – I mean, Zion's a horrible example because he actually is the one guy who is capable of transcending that. But it's like Clemson loses their whole team and adds 3 top 50 guys, and now their recruiting class is top 10 in the country. I don't think that top 50 guys are getting you the tournament. They might get you close, but it's not like a guarantee.
Yeah, and then even two of the teams that actually finished in the top 25 this year, Maryland and Villanova, were right on the cusp. And both those teams, they had a lot of freshmen, as you mentioned. I think Maryland's guys overachieved more so than Villanova's. But, people had very high expectations for Quinterly. He busts. Cole Swider was midseason, but he wasn't on track to do anything. Brandon Slater didn't do anything. So out of like your four freshmen, right, one of them was a productive member of the rotation, and that kind of shows just how these guys need time, and so like a lot of the pushback I got from a Villanova, right, like how do you not have them in the top 25? Well, you barely made it last year. You're losing your two best players, who are your lone offensive contributors in terms of creating shots, right? And then you're replacing them with freshmen, and then you just saw your highly touted freshman class bust, at least in year one. And then you're asking, where is Villanova? And I'm seeing Villanova ranked, 7th, 8th, 9th. It blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I would rank them, but I think the 7, 8, 9 is absurd unless – I mean, this is a better class than last year's class, but, like, the amount that you're heaping on Brian Antoine and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl in year one to be – I mean, those guys would both have to be all Big East players for them to have a shot.
Yeah, because, I mean, Bay, Samuels, I mean, they're very good, like, role players. And I think Bay has potential to be more than that. But, I mean, Pascal and Booth, I mean, I can't stress it enough for people who didn't watch a ton of Villanova. I mean, the ball's in their hands every possession, high pick and roll, Booth's going to the basket, shooting pull-ups. Pascal's trying to take the center off the dribble. And Earl he's like an elite role player. He's not quite the defender that Brandon Clark is, because, none are, right? But that's the type of game, the type of style that he has. As a freshman, he's not going to be able to create as well as Pascal did. So it's crazy that Villanova is being ranked so high. Like I understand like why people are ranking Gonzaga, right? I mean, they play in the WCC. They're probably going to have, at worst like 26, 27 wins. They were just a number one seed. I can even see why people are ranking Louisville, right? Because they have Jordan Nwora. We talked last time about how Sam Williamson's gotten a lot of buzz. They have a few other returning players who are key contributors, but the Villanova, I just cannot wrap my head around.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And we both got plenty of good reaction from our top 25s. I didn't get as much, so I didn't tweet mine out, mostly because I didn't really want that in my mentions right now. Like, I just didn't have the time to like respond to everyone. I'll tweet it out at some point, just because I think that's fair and how I should handle it. But I didn't want to have to respond to 75 to 150 replies. And credit to you for doing so, Brad, because you did a really good job with your top 25. And I think the fact that everyone like me having Ohio State and Louisville in there, and like other people have that, and you not having it there, but like other people also have that, like there is just absolutely no consensus. I think that was the clearest thing from the early top 25s in my book.
Yeah, if I didn't want the criticism, I wouldn't have posted it, and I wouldn't have been the first person to post it. Like someone was like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "The first person who posted." Like if I post this on Thursday, I get three retweets, 5 likes and 4 comments, right? But I wanted to be first for a reason. I was first last year. I did the same on that Sunday before the tournament. Did intentionally. Being the first one, you have no ones to go off of, right? And every person who does it after can actually look at the ones that are out there and kind of use that as a guide. And I'll admit that I think I messed up on Mississippi State. I'll admit I didn't see that Tyler Cook said that he was leaving for good. Those I think were my 2 biggest blunders there. But I think everything else I think is solid.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on from there. Congratulations, as we mentioned at the top, to Virginia winning the national championship. And let's get into some coaching changes, because that's really the biggest news in my mind of the last month, other than the games, and certainly player movement is going to be tied into that. But a lot of jobs have flipped. We finally have a head coach in at UCLA after a disaster of a search there. Why don't we start with that one, Brad? Mick Cronin from Cincinnati, headed to Westwood. in a search that pretty much led everywhere but Mick Cronin. Like at the start of the search, everyone was like, well, Mick Cronin could be in there. And then like once you got to March, it was like, yeah, Mick Cronin's an option, but he's not the number one option. Like basically Mick Cronin was like the last girl left at the bar, and the guy decided, well, I guess, like it's a very uninspiring hire for me. I think Mick Cronin can coach. I think his style won't be appreciated by UCLA fans. I think his temperament won't be appreciated by UCLA fans. I think his lack of postseason success won't be appreciated by UCLA fans. I think UCLA should have hired Earl Watson. Your thoughts?
So I'm not sure if Watson was the right move there. But I do agree that, I mean, it's ironic that they're so obsessed with postseason success. They ran Ben Howland out of town after making multiple Final Fours, and then they hire a guy who notoriously can't get out of the second round. And then the way that he builds the teams, right? He doesn't get highly ranked recruits, and like he probably could, given the amount of success that Cincinnati has had. Like Jaron Cumberland was top 100. He is the only guy on their roster. Samari Curtis, I think, sneaks in there just barely. I mean, this is a team that develops under the radar guys. That's their MO. I'm not sure if Gary Clark was top 100, but like Kyle Washington was, but he was a transfer. Jacob Evans was just barely. So I mean, besides like Lance Stevenson, right, and Jermaine Lawrence, they don't get the highly rated recruits, which Mick Cronin has had a ton of success on this, but it's interesting to see if he can pivot, because UCLA is going to expect serious recruiting classes after what Alford and Howland have brought in. I mean, I like the hire. I think Rick Barnes would have been a better hire. I think maybe even Jamie Dixon could have been a better hire TCU is a really tough job, and we've seen kind of Pitt. The smoke and mirrors has gone from Pitt. I think that's a lot tougher of a job than it was given credit for, and like the job he did was more impressive in hindsight. I mean, this is a good hire. I don't know if he'll meet expectations, but I mean, they could have done a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cronin's a fine coach. I actually think it could work pretty well early. I always kind of look at the coaching hires for like one coach brings in something that the previous coach didn't. So like Mick Cronin's going to bring like defense and toughness and like togetherness and like solid in-game acumen to a group that's pretty talented. I mean, I'm just trying to find their roster. I mean, because they're going to lose Chris Wilkes and Jalen Hands. Both are going pro.
So it's probably like a Tiger Campbell, right. Prince Ali, Jules Bernard, Cody Riley, Moses Brown, and then the bench is really strong, but the starters aren't that strong.
Right, Sharif will be there, and David
Chris
Singleton,
Smith, Jalen Hill, yeah.
I mean, they'll have some guys, and we'll see if that recruiting class stays together. I think they will. I think it will. I mean, neither of those guys are studs, Jacquez or Kyman, but they're fine. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, I think he could bring a lot of toughness and like togetherness to that group and win in year one and get to the tournament. It wouldn't surprise me. I think the one impression I got from the people I talked to today about Mick Cronin was he's not one who's going to play hardball with AAU people. Like, he's not. I don't know if selling your soul is the right word, but I think there's a lot of coaches who are willing to deal with a lot more crap from AAU people and kind of rely on connections in that world to get players. And Mick Cronin's not that guy. And that, I mean, with the exception of Lance, he's never done that. He's going to build relationships. He's going to see what happens. And I think at UCLA, we'll see how that transpires in terms of getting players. He doesn't have those West Coast connections. And I don't think you need to build UCLA by getting kids from West Coast Elite, kids from Compton Magic, et cetera. But I think you have to be connected to those programs. I don't think you can ignore them. So we'll see the staff he hires. I think he'll be really critical in terms of building a roster. But I think he'll win. I just don't think he'll win enough, right? Like, if the whole thing was like Steve Alford, who went to 2 Sweet 16s, wasn't enough, and I would agree, because Steve Alford did a pretty poor job in my mind at UCLA, or Ben Howland didn't do enough at UCLA. I just don't see how it's possible you think Mick Cronin will do more. And I think the fact that they couldn't do better than Mick Cronin indicates to me that this job is just not seen very highly. in the college sports world right now, and why I probably would have went with Earl Watson, because you just take a gamble, right? Like Earl Watson would recruit better than Mick Cronin. He'd get kids. And, he had a bright coaching future. He was seen as a rising star until that Suns thing. And that was partially just an organizational ineptitude and a lack of talent. But I think Earl Watson, he's in a spot where he could have been incredible, and it could have brought UCLA back to prominence with the UCLA man. I just don't know that Mick Cronin is going to drive excitement. He's going to drive people into the seats, and that's what UCLA basketball is.
Yeah, I mean, so like you can't fault someone for not winning in the NBA if they don't have good players. Like,
right.
Like who cares how good of a coach you are in the NBA? It's truly all about the roster that's put together, and especially when you have a young tanking team, the teams are mismatched. Like there's not a lot of fit and like cohesion there because they don't build because of that. They're trying to either stockpile assets and then throw a couple veterans on there for leadership. It's not like a winning environment. So I don't really care about that. In terms of the team that Cronin is leaving behind, I mean, if they could get a grad transfer point guard, which there are not many available at all, but if they could even get like a scoring guard in there to play point guard next to Cumberland, have Cumberland be the primary creator, I mean, Cincinnati could have been scary good, like top 10, maybe even higher. They bring almost everybody back except for Jennifer and Broom. It's going to be really interesting to see if the new coach can retain these guys. I'm not sure like where these guys can really go that's better than Cincinnati, and we'll see if they can kind of run it back. I think I would move them down in my rankings a little bit. Still top 25, but we got to see who their new coach is and if they can bring in a point guard.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a pretty strong core. The question is, what would leave? I mean, I'm just kind of looking at the roster math basically and saying Rashawn Fredericks might be able to grad transfer because he's a fourth-year guy. Trey Scott might be able to grad transfer because he's a fourth-year guy. And then kind of the freshman class as well as like Keith Williams could leave, I suppose, as well. So, I mean, we'll see who's hired. I don't think they're going to hire Darren Savino from inside. Savino's the guy who got Jermaine Lawrence. He's the NYC recruiter. He's got a lot of connections out there. A guy who I've seen kind of buzzed around whenever a MAC or a low A10 job opens up. People say Darren Savino. It never really happens. So we'll see if he gets Cincinnati. I don't think he will. I think John Brannon's a really good choice there. I think Matt McMahon would be a really nice choice. I know Luke Von Exel is also in the mix. Former played at Cincinnati, now on the staff with the Grizzlies. So we'll see where that job goes and what the interest level is, because it's always interesting with these later jobs. Sometimes the interest is really high because a lot of coaches who knew they wanted to move kind of got stuck and realized, okay, I got to get a job now. So that could be interesting to watch.
I mean, it just feels like either Brandon or McMahon is such a no-brainer. Like right in your backyard. Built in a Brandon's case, he kind of built Northern Kentucky. Right, he was their first Division I coach, and he's brought them to multiple tournaments. Which is very impressive for a recent convert from Division II. And then obviously McMahon certainly didn't build Murray State. I mean, that was didn't Cronin coach there before, and then Billy Kennedy and Steve Prohm. So I mean, they've churned out coaches. I mean, either one I think would be a great fit and would keep Cincinnati relevant. Yeah, I saw someone mention Thad Matta. I don't know if Matta is like seriously considering getting back in. I think he just has to kind of show his face, for the terms of like his buyout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just really has to like he just has to like talk to someone about the job and show he had interest. That's really all it is. So yeah, definitely do not think that he's going to go there, even though that was kind of buzzed. Yeah, I think it'll be Brandon or Von Exel. I'd be pretty surprised if it's someone else. But yeah, I mean, a lot of other jobs to touch on as well, Brad. And I think I kind of first go out to the SEC where we had a couple of big moves. Three, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Alabama, all flipping so far. Vanderbilt goes out on a limb and goes for Jerry Stackhouse, who is well respected around basketball. Was a guy who's interviewed for NBA head coaching jobs. a guy who has his name in grassroots basketball. We don't know how involved he is, but his name is on an AAU program. So we'll see where that goes with that. It's kind of a gamble of a hire for Vanderbilt. Not a guy I would have tossed away Bryce Drew for. But then, Arkansas and Alabama, to me, two slam dunk hires. Nate Oates at Bama, Eric Musselman at Arkansas, two guys who are going to recruit, two guys who are going to, be tremendous in-game coaches, going to bring tremendous energy to programs that I don't think had a lot of it. Just two of the best coaches in college basketball for my money, and two guys who I wrote a column about this. Would it be last week now? Yeah, I'm just kind of talking about how valued SEC jobs are right now. I don't know that 15 years ago a coach of Nate Oates' stature is leaving for Alabama. I don't know that Eric Musselman is leaving for Arkansas 10, 15 years ago. I think it's really impressive what types of names SEC programs are pulling, and it goes to the commitment, and I think it also goes to just seeing what type of culture around athletics is at those programs. And so definitely was something I was noticing, was just kind of how valuable those jobs are seen and how much of a step up it is for mid-major basketball.
No, absolutely. I think with Arkansas, it was so crazy because Musselman's wife tweeted, she tweeted we're not going anywhere. What? Why do you feel the need to tweet that when you know that you're if not literally on your way out in 2 days,
right,
at least interviewing for the job. So that was crazy, but it was a great hire for Arkansas. The SEC just has so much money. They can just attract these coaches. UCLA makes a run at Barnes, and then Tennessee just ponies up a huge raise for Barnes to stay. I mean, that's how you elevate your league is you keep the coaches, right? Because the bad coaches get fired. So if you can keep your good coaches for leaving for better jobs, that's when your league can really start rolling. And I think the SEC is starting to kind of get in that zone because of all the money that they can use to counter any offer. But Arkansas was a great hire. I think if Musselman can get the right transfers in there, maybe they could be a tournament caliber team coming up. Vanderbilt's in a pretty deep rebuild. Stackhouse, not a bad hire. I mean, he was a G League coach, right? So this isn't like Chris Mullen situation here. It's tough. I think I agree that if you had told me Bryce Drew for another year or Stackhouse, I think I would have said might as well give Bryce Drew another year. But I mean that's a fine hire. And Alabama knocked it out of the park with Oates. I mean, they've already gotten their two big guns to come back with Kira Lewis, who was the most important guy who needed to come back, and then John Petty. I think Alabama's top 25 right now. I mean, they have a great coach. They have a great top four. And then we talked about this earlier with the recruiting classes. They're going to bring in Forbes and Gary, who are both top 100, mixed with these veterans. You have Alex Reese too, coming off the bench, who's a junior, an experienced player who's been in the rotation, former top 100 recruit himself, and then maybe you get Trendon Watford too.
Yeah, I was going to say Watford, and the other one is, I believe, Beetle Bolden is visiting this weekend, and he'd be kind of an interesting piece to throw into that backcourt. I mean, the name of the game for Nate Oates is guards, and playing that aggressive blue-collar style, both on offense and defense, and I think they have the pieces to play that style right away. So I think that's really exciting if you're Bama. You get Watford, play him at the 4. It was like a small ball 4, space teams out, on the perimeter, and big man down low. And I think that team could be really exciting and fun to watch under Nate Oates. And he's going to bring a new energy and a new brand, and they're going to recruit because Nate Oates is a really good recruiter. But Brian Hodgson, who got pretty much everybody on that team, he got 7 out of 8 of the guys on Buffalo, who 7 of their 8 returning players for this coming season were gotten by Brian Hodgson, and all 4 of the commits were gotten by Brian Hodgson, plus Raymond Hawkins, who is like a late stock riser type, who's in this recruiting class for Alabama, who just signed. He was going to go to Buffalo over Arizona State and Arkansas, I want to say, where the schools he beat at, who Buffalo beat now. So Brian Hodgson is one of those bright recruiters in the country, a guy who I thought should have gotten the Buffalo job over Jim Weitzel. So I think definitely they're going to get players. I think Arkansas is also in a position, Brad, and you can kind of chime in here whenever you'd like, but I think Arkansas is also in a position to be kind of sneaky good next year with Musselman, just because kind of my biggest complaint with Muss over the last really 18 months was that he really started to emphasize just more athleticism and overall talent and not system fit and shooting. And that was what was made them so dangerous, was they had all these shooters who could go create shots. And like a Caleb Martin who could get downhill or shoot the three, or like Kendall Stevens who was just a shooter, etc. And I think with Isaiah Joe and Mason Jones, you have kind of a backbone there to do similar things with these kind of 6'5" wings. And then you have Jalen Harris, who's a pretty solid point guard. You got like an athletic big like Reggie Chaney, who I think could be a breakout guy in that system. In like kind of a similar mold to a Jordan Caroline, doesn't really have the outside game or the shooting, but kind of a small ball big guy. So yeah, they have to add some guys, and I think they'll probably go grad transfer too, probably grab a couple sit out kids, and they're also trying to get Kyrie Walker, who's that big athletic guard who's originally going to Arizona State's top 50 kid, who's in 20, but there's a good chance he's going to reclass. Muss had him in his sights at Nevada, so we'll see if we can pull him at Arkansas as well. So I think Arkansas could also be in tournament contention depending on what they do in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Arkansas just needs to upgrade like their talent level. Like they have a bunch of good players. Isaiah Joe is, certainly on the verge of a breakout, with his shooting ability. But I mean, they could just use an upgrade at maybe like the 4 and or the 5. I know Jace Johnson from Utah is on the board now. I'm not sure if that's that much of an upgrade. It doesn't really fit Musselman's style either. But I mean, there are a few grad transfers out there. I think that the grad transfer pool might be weaker right now than it has in past years. But there are a couple guys that can help you. And there's Rajon Tucker from Little Rock, Shakur Houston from UNLV.
I think Houston would be a really good fit at Arkansas.
Yeah, so would I really upgrade that power forward spot? I mean, there are a ton of two guards.
Right.
I mean, if you need a two guard, you could have your pick in between Edmund Gilder, who came on the market today, Christian Keeling, Dante Fitzpatrick, Max Hazard.
Justin Pierce is like a 3, but he can kind of do everything.
Yeah, and then I mean this guy would be a home run for Arkansas. Chris Clark, who I think could be the best one on the market. I mean, playing that power forward spot, a guy who can create offense. He's a very very good passer. Playing him around shooters like Joe and Jones. So there are some pretty good options.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's definitely some grad transfer looks, and I'd expect Arkansas, to be able to land a couple of guys in that mix. A few other coaching changes that should probably get touched on. Just kind of going through it here. I mean, Wake does not open, to the surprise of some. Virginia Tech does after Buzz Williams officially takes A&M. I don't even know if we need to talk about that hire, Brad, because we all knew what was happening. But Virginia Tech goes after Mike Young, who I think is a really smart coach, a really good offensive mind. I don't know how he's going to recruit in the ACC. I think that's kind of everyone's consensus. But if he can get players, they'll be in good shape. It's just a matter of this year or next 2 years are going to be really, really tough.
I mean, the cupboard is as bare as bare can be. They still have Kerry Blackshear as of this moment. He could grad transfer, in which case, this is Cal, Washington State, sub 200 level bad. There's just nothing here. Buzz, built a roster that was going to expire and then bolted. The Mike Young was a good hire. I've seen a lot of Virginia Tech fans being very angry at the hire. I saw a lot of people being disappointed that Kevin Willard was mentioned as a candidate. I mean, Kevin Willard would have been light years better and more equipped to turn this bad roster around quickly than Mike Young. I don't know if Mike Young can get it turned around fast enough. I mean, being the guy who follows Buzz Williams is a real unenviable task. And I mean, I just don't know how quick you can turn this around.
I also think generally, they pulled Buzz, and it was a surprise. Like, no one thought Virginia Tech could get Buzz. It was like seen as this is a job where you're going to hire a mid-major coach, but Buzz wanted it, and all of a sudden people thought that, oh, now this is some great job that everyone wants. And I think people wanted it, but not for the the people wanted it if they're going to pay like $3.5 million, but they didn't want it for like $2 million, which is what they're going to pay. I think it was kind of seen as a job where you could leverage it for a raise. So yeah, I mean, Ryan Odom was in there, Mike Young was in there, Wes Miller could have been in there. I don't know officially if he was, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine hire. It's just going to take some time for them. That's the only ACC job, I believe, Brad. Pac-12 did anything open yet? Not Arizona, not yet at least. Washington State hires Kyle Smith. I think that's a pretty decent hire for kind of the job that is. Cal goes with Mark Fox, which is, I think, as uninspiring a hire as you could make.
Yes, with the ACC, really quickly. I mean, I think it's not going to happen, but Clemson and Boston College, I think, should definitely open up. I mean, these teams are losing guys. There's no momentum. Clemson's roster is Virginia Tech bad for next year. It's a slightly better, but it's going nowhere, right? At least with Wake Forest, you're bringing guys back. Probably not going to be enough to move up the standings. But I mean, Clemson and Brownell, they pushed all the chips in for this year. Had 4 seniors in the starting lineup, and it just fell flat.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the challenge, with both Clemson and BC, it's like, well, BC was like, we have to commit more resources to Jim Christian, which I think is fair. Like, I don't think Jim Christian has had a shot, just because I think it's just a tougher job than the rest of the league, because they don't commit a ton of money to the staff and a ton of other stuff that's necessary to win. But it's also like BC has no hope now without Kai Bowman. So you're going to have him coach another year and then get fired. Like, there's no chance that Jim Christian makes it out of the season alive, right?
No, I mean, with losing Kai Bowman early in the NBA, losing Jerome Robinson early in the NBA, I mean, a lot of teams that are much better programs and much better equipped to lose guys can't handle losing guys early in consecutive seasons. So, I mean, Boston College just has no hope.
Right. Yeah, they're done. I mean, I think Clemson could be really bad, and then Brownell gets fired, but they give him that big extension. That's why I don't give extensions after 1 year, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same thing with Johnny Dawkins. I wanted to touch on this real quick. Johnny Dawkins got hyped up and like people were like, he should get Vanderbilt, he should get another job. Johnny Dawkins' cupboard is bare right now at UCF. He got, as we mentioned, he got 2 guys he inherited, BJ Taylor and Taco Fall, and they turned into good 4-year players. And then he got his son. Look at the rest of that roster. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Smith's a good 5th best player. So is Terrell Allen. But looking at the roster now, I mean, those are your best players. And maybe last year when Fall and Taylor were juniors, I mean, maybe if those guys were healthy the full season, maybe that's a tournament team, right? But looking forward, they have very, very little optimism. And at least they're going with the transfer well. Hewitt Alec was a top 5 JUCO recruit who was TCU's backup center for a semester before leaving. Ibrahim Doumbia, South Carolina, big-time athlete, didn't really show a ton, but you're gonna need more. So this is a pretty substantial rebuild. And AAC, which has a few teams making serious moves, UCF's moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. The AAC is on the rise. UCF is not. Trying to make sure we get to all the kind of coaching changes we wanted to get to. I mean, there's kind of the ripple effect. Obviously, like Nevada's open. I don't think they should hire from within. Gus Argonal is there, but I think when you're in a position like Nevada, you have to shoot high. I think that my frustration with what Buffalo did is that Buffalo decided, we're going to hire from within with Jim Weitzel. Like, it's such a safe hire. Right? Like, if you're Buffalo, your job has never been more attractive than it is right now. If you're Buffalo, go ahead and hire Luke Yaklich or go hire John Becker I don't know for a fact that those guys were involved, but I think based on my knowledge of college basketball, I'd imagine both would want the job. I think both of them would do tremendous jobs. And those are guys you wouldn't have been able to pull necessarily 5 years ago. Like, I think you have to use your platform. That's why I thought it was crazy when people were like, oh, Dedrick Taylor for Nevada. Like, are you kidding me? Nevada could get mid-level Big West coaches 5 years ago. If you're going to hire a Big West coach, hire Russell Turner, who at least makes the tournament all the time.
Yeah, I know that the coaching changes account said Russell Turner is a leader at this point. I like that. I think Travis DeCuire, with his history of winning with transfers, I think that could have been a nice logical step there, and Nevada kind of continue this transfer identity. But I mean, Turner's gotten some transfers, right? He had Robert Cartwright this year from Stanford. He won a game this year, but my favorite teams, I think their best teams, is when they had that enormous front line with Mamadou Ndiaye, and they had like a huge power forward too, and they was this really physically imposing team. I wonder if he can go back to that and try to recruit more giants to come in.
Yeah, I mean, I
like that style.
I hate it, but I think
like the Simbular.
The other natural hire I could see is in terms of coming from a D1 is Mark Pope. I see his name tossed around a little bit at BYU as well as Nevada. I think that would be a really good. I think that'd be a really good hire.
Yeah, Utah Valley, another team that's built with transfers. A lot of them being BYU transfers, ironically, but it seems like in Utah, a lot of the guys don't want to leave Utah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's Mormon related because they're very accommodating to guys leaving for 2 years on missions. But I mean, when I'm trying to project these depth charts, it's not as big of a deal anymore because BYU's not as good. But like you'll see with Utah, like you'll check their opening day roster and it's like totally forgot about this guy. Thought he left the team a couple years ago. Now he's back, right? It's very tough to account for. And I remember reading that Dave Rose said that was like the biggest hurdle of the job is guys just leave. Like you have Eric Mika, who was a great freshman year, and then he's gone for 2 years. Same with Tyler Hawes. So I mean that's a difficult wrinkle of the job. I don't know why they've struggled so much recently to get into the NCAA tournament. Is it just like this new culture where guys who aren't going to be drafted are leaving early that wasn't present like 5 to 10 years ago, with guys like Childs and Mika not staying until they're like 25 years old, because BYU is a perennial tournament team until very recently.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. It'll be interesting to see where they go with that hire, because that hasn't gotten done, right?
No,
I know they were looking at one of the assistants on the Jazz. Mark Pope was also in there, so that'll be an interesting job to monitor in terms of the mid-major landscape. Wofford's one to watch now that Mike Young's gone. We could see potentially NKU open, and then there's St. John's is the other one that we'll have to watch. That's not a mid-major, but I think that's the other final big job we want to touch on before we move on. Correct, Brad?
Yeah. St. John's, the two guys that are being mentioned, both I think would be great fits. Tim Klutz from Iona, Bobby Hurley from Arizona State. I think so. You have to pay Hurley a lot to come over from Arizona State, and I guess I read in Zach Brazilier's column, the St. John's guy, St. John's beat writer. So either the president or someone vitamin water related is a St. John's booster, and so I guess he's willing to fork over some money if they get Bobby Hurley. I mean, Klutz would probably do just as good and be a lot cheaper. And I mean, Klutz might even be a better coach than a Bobby Hurley, but Hurley certainly has a name value. Hurley certainly recruits better. But St. John's had a lot of success with transfers. That's how they built this up. I mean, Mullen and or team chemistry kind of squandered it, but they built one talented team. And the team for next year, if they had Cam Mack and by extension Matt Abdelnassi, the talented recruiting assistant coach, I mean, they would have undeniable tournament talent. Now, would Mullen be able to lead them back to the tournament in a stronger Big East? Would the chemistry be better just switching out Pons for Mack and improving the front court? I don't know, but they're going to be in a pretty significant rebuild with Simon leaving. He's going pro. I think he's an interesting pro prospect. Herron's a senior. He could certainly go pro. His stock's not getting any higher. Figueroa is a really interesting player. Maybe he even gets some draft looks or some two-way looks if he goes pro. So St. John's in a bit of a flux right now, but I think either of those guys could get some more transfers in there and restart the St. John's resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tim Cluess is undoubtedly a better game coach than Bobby Hurley. Bobby Hurley has squandered 2 really good rosters and not won a tournament game. Well, if you count the first 4. As a tournament game, he has not won a round of 64 NCAA tournament game. Got blown out this year against Buffalo. I think Tim Cluess is a far better game coach. He makes great adjustments. He runs really good offense. The idea with Cluess is that you would hire 2 really, really good assistant coaches who recruit. One from the AAU world, one from just kind of probably the transfer world, like an Abdul Massi, and you just get players, and Tim Cluess will turn that team into a tournament team, and a really good tournament team with that. And there's a lot of people right now are pushing behind the scenes for Tim Cluess in terms of kind of grassroots people in New York, in terms of media members. They're definitely trying to push Tim Cluess towards that job. I know there's been buzz that the relationship between St. John's and especially, Lou Carnesecca and Tim Cluess is frosty, going back to, I think, when Cluess played there before he transferred to Hofstra. Like, I don't know if that still matters, but it might. And I think there's definitely going to be pressure from Mike Cragg to push in a Duke guy, whether that's Hurley, whether that's John Shire, if they swing and a miss on Hurley. I think I have no issue with Hurley being a number 1 option for that job, even though I don't think Hurley's that great. I do think Tim Cluess probably should get a look, and I think the more pressure that from the grassroots world that gets put on them to take him over, especially if they can't get Hurley, who I know John Rothstein mentioned, was that there's concern that Hurley wouldn't want St. John's because he wouldn't want to consistently recruit against his brother. I don't know if I buy that, but interesting nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, I think Cluess is a really logical hire. He loves St. John's. He loves the city. He knows how to win. And he'd just be like a no-nonsense, no-bullshit guy, right? Like, Tim Cluess is not going to deal with prima donnas. He will get you in line, and he will get that team going in the right direction, playing together by the end of the season and have them competitive. And I think Cluess would be a really good hire, and I think it's the direction they should go.
Yeah, but I think that if Hurley and Cluess turn it down, I think that there'll be a lot of mid-major coaches that you could turn to before you went to John Shire. I
don't think they'd hire John Shire unless, other than the Mike Cragg effect.
Yeah,
I think Mike Cragg wants to push in Duke guys.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of high major teams hiring assistants. I think there's just so many guys who have had the experience of building a program and at the mid-major level and have had success, that it feels like, I'm sure that, we can point out tons of examples of guys who either their boss leaves and they take the head chair and have had a ton of success, or other guys who have come from other programs. But for me, it just feels like there are always guys who have, built strong mid-major teams with a lot less advantages, right? Really having to scour for talent, and you can't just recruit the best players on the best AAU teams. So that's why I always like the Wojo hire has kind of been mixed, but I'm sure that we could find a list of guys who went right from like high major assistant to high major job. But I think that's going to be a fairly thin list.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. I mean, it's really just the Duke guys, and the Duke tree has not been solid. I don't know that that's just the lack of experience, or I think it might just legit be like what's the like these guys aren't prepared to like run a program where they're finding like players for themselves and not just getting handed them because they're dudes. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, I mean, I think the coaching wire will be interesting. I think Cluse to St. John's would create an interesting ripple effect because, Iona would finally be open. Would they be able to just hire Jared Grosso? Would he want to leave after 1 year? From Brian, he's a very loyal guy. I don't know if he would, but I think he'd probably have to, given Iona's a better job and it's home. But yeah, we'll definitely see.
I mean, Brian plays in a high school gym.
Yeah. Let's be real. But
Bryant, the basketball power of Northern Rhode Island.
Yeah. So we have about 15-ish minutes left in the pod before I have to run. So that's the time limit on us not doing another hour and 45-minute podcast like we did on Sunday, Brad. Let's talk some transfers. Let's talk some player movement, some draft stuff. Let's first kind of hit on some big draft news. Tyler Cook likely gone. I think he said like the intends to leave kind of mood. That certainly takes a little luster off Iowa. Your thoughts on that?
So I had Iowa at 9 with him. I didn't see that he was leaving when I put Iowa at 9. But then I guess he retweeted someone saying that it's not final that he's going. He could still come back. I think he's probably gone. In the same vein as Jared Harper, I got a lot of pushback on Sunday for saying Harper was leaving. Harper's leaving. He was supposed to leave last year, stayed an extra year. Same with Cook. I mean, I think they're both out the door. I'm still pretty high on Iowa though. I think Garza and Bohannon are a really strong top two. I like Isaiah Moss a lot. He's someone who could also leave, so they would need him to stay where I have them now at number 11. But you have a guy like Joe Wieskamp was a top 50 recruit, come back for his sophomore year. You have Pat McCaffrey, very highly rated recruit, played the 3 and the 4. Jack Nunge, who was a starter the year before, top, I think, 125 recruit, redshirted this past year. And then Pemsel, not great, but he's been in the rotation before, experienced player. So this team has experience. It has enough young guys who are rated highly, who can improve. And I still think that this is a top 12, 13 team.
My kind of one quick note there is I don't know that – like, do you think a Jordan Bohannon point guard team can be a top 15 team? I don't know that he's like really a point guard. I don't know that you can put Connor McCaffrey. I don't think you can give Connor the ball all the time and play Bohannon off the ball. So I think that limits their ceiling.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I mean, they were rolling at one point this year, and then the wheels fall off. In the future, I want to track kind of like teams that stumble down the stretch but return a lot of guys, like how they do the next season. The sample size might be too small for that, but
right. Yeah, it will be tight, but I think that is an interesting kind of storyline to monitor. Next up, Jared Harper, gone from Auburn. Kind of one of those in my mind where it's like there's not much more he could have done in college basketball, right? Like he's not growing 2 inches by staying another year. That's really the only thing he can do as a player to become a more realistic prospect. He's still, I think, top 75 by a lot of metrics. I know you had him leaving, I had him staying, so definitely a blow for Auburn, and I think knocks him out of the top 25.
Yeah, I don't think that you can rank a McCormick, Dowdy, Okoro, Purifoy, McLemore with Okiki. Is he healthy? Is he not? Okiki could still leave, and I think he would still be a first rounder. So I mean, maybe he should leave. Yeah, I don't think that you can rank Auburn. All the people that criticize me, I think one point for me here. You might be getting points with Louisville and Gonzaga, but I think I got you with the Auburn.
Here you are. Ignas Brazdeikis, gone from Michigan, it appears. Jordan Poole is up in the air. Charles Matthews is gone as well. That could have huge ramifications.
Yeah, I think as long as Poole returns, they're still a top 25 team. Probably, I haven't slotted them since Brazdeikis is leaving. Maybe top 15. That might be a little aggressive. But if Poole leaves, I don't think that you can rank them. I mean, they had a lot of great recruits this year who Beeline will develop, but I mean, none of them really played. None of them were in the consistent rotation except for Brezdikas. He's leaving. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And I'm not sure, kind of in the similar vein to a Villanova, losing Poole, Matthews, and Brezdikas, you're returning guys, but I mean, there's not enough pop there, I don't think.
Right. Like if that would create a lineup of what? Xavier Simpson,
Eli Brooks, Jalen Wilson, Isaiah Livers, and John Teskey.
Ugh, that is gross, man.
And then you'll have David DeJulius, who was kind of sneaking into the rotation at the end of the year. Combo guard, you'll have him. You have Brandon Johns, who was not really in the rotation. Colin Castleton was not really in the rotation. And Johns and Castleton play the two positions that are set, power forward and center. And then, point guard set with Simpson, but you can play more than one point guard. They have Cole Bejema, who's a top 100 shooter. I think he's more of a 3-4. Nunez is a shooter, 3-star freshman. He didn't play much this year. But they would definitely need a grad transfer wing if they wanted to be a top 25 team. And even with one, I don't think that they would be one.
I would love Justin Pierce in that system.
I think either North Carolina playing the 4, although Rajon Tucker could be a better fit there. And I saw that he visited Notre Dame, who if DJ Harvey had returned to Notre Dame, I would have ranked them in the top 25. They could use a guy, a 3-4 type in that lineup.
Justin Pierce, of note, dad went to Northwestern, mom went to Northwestern. There's photos on the internet of Justin Pierce wearing Northwestern Wildcat apparel at the 2016 Outback Bowl. So I think what you're hearing is Justin Pierce is going to turn down a slew of contenders to come play in the purple and white and be on the 13th best team in the Big Ten.
Too bad it's like the one position that you have enough, right? With Nance and Barron.
If Chris Collins can land another white 3-4 who can shoot the 3 and rebound a little bit, I think that's the only player he wants to recruit at this point. He wants to build an entire roster of 3-4s who can't really dribble the ball and aren't high level rebounders, but shoot it okay and handle it okay.
Do you mean Marquette?
Yeah, pretty much. He wants a bunch of Hausner. Miller Kopp, Robbie Barron, Justin Pierce. All right. Anyway, we can mess around with that one all day, but just kind of looking at the transfer list as well, because I don't think there's too many other huge draft decisions that we know. I mean, Ashton Higgins and Trey Jones are back. That's certainly big. But
Kabengele's gone.
Kabengele, yes, that's very big.
I don't know if Florida State's rankable. I think they're probably still a tournament team, but I don't think that you can rank them, especially if Balsa Capriza is ineligible.
Will he be ineligible?
I think that was the thought, right? I mean, a lot of teams backed off.
If a guy like Quinterly was eligible, though, I don't imagine that Balsa will be ineligible.
That's true, but Quinterly wasn't on the wiretap. I mean, Balsa was on the wiretap with Will Wade, but the big ass offer.
Yeah, but big ass offer was Javante.
Oh, Javante Smart.
He was talking to Dawkins about Balsa. He was do you want the big kid? And he was like, yeah. We'll see what we can make an offer for. But we don't know if the money was actually exchanged hands. There's nothing wrong with taking an offer as long as you don't take money.
Okay, so he may be okay.
He's still raw.
Yeah. They have a nice top 8, but it's just lacking on the top end talent. I really like Trent Forrest. I really think MJ Walker is underrated. He's overrated given his recruiting ranking, but I think overall he's an underrated player. But there's a little short on talent without Kabengele. He would have been their best player. He's awesome, and they're gonna fall on my top 25 from 7th to unranked.
Yeah, wanted to run through kind of the top transfers available before we wrap up. We got 7-8 minutes left. So I'm mostly just going off of Jeff Goodman's best transfers available list because I think it's a pretty good resource. You got Pat Andry. I know he's visited NC State and was going to visit K-State. I think he makes sense as a Dean Wade light type guy. I don't know how he fits in the system in terms of his movement in the NC State run and gun, but you got to shoot it.
Yeah, I think he would fit pretty well with both rosters in terms of a need, right? I mean, both teams could really use a power forward who could shoot the ball. In Kansas State's case, I don't know if Andre moves them from where I have them as like 8th in the Big 12 up to the tournament, but they have a decent roster, I guess. You're really relying on jumps from Giara and Mike McGurl, and then Xavier Sneed staying. It's kind of an underwhelming team. One grad transfer who I like, who we haven't heard much about. We mentioned Shakur Houston from UNLV, who's a big time rebounder. Also haven't heard much from Keith Stone, who was the starting power forward for Florida before he got hurt. He had a down year as a redshirt junior, but he made great strides as a redshirt sophomore in terms of a floor spacer and a small ball 5.
Yeah, he definitely helped someone in terms of fit. I think he would definitely be a nice like complementary piece. You could start, bring off the bench as a big guy. I think that one makes a lot of sense. A few other grad transfer names. Joey Brunk. I know you're not a big Brunk guy, right?
I like him. I'm just not sure if he's a. I think he's a fine starting center.
Were you more anti-Brunk or Fowler?
Oh, anti-Fowler. He stunk. Ooh.
Yeah. Brunk's list per Goodman is Indiana, Ole Miss, UCF, Florida, Northwestern. I think Indiana is probably the spot there.
They have 2 centers, though. They have Fisher Davis and De'Aaron Davis. Ole Miss has a wide open position, and Brunk has 2 years. So I don't know if this is a consideration for him, but he could do the double grad transfer and go one year Ole Miss, and then next year when Indiana's depth chart opens up a little bit, he could jump back up to Indiana.
You could also go to Northwestern and probably start as R5. And then if you wanted to leave again, he could leave. If not, he'd still probably be a starting 5. So that would work too. Hanif Cheatham, I think that's probably Nebraska. It was like it sounded like it was mostly Nebraska and Nevada, and then Musk leaves, and Nebraska could use a wing. So I think Hanif Cheatham probably Nebraska. Ingram, we talked about Daison Ingram. Shaq Houston, we don't really have a list for. Christian Keeling, everyone wants.
I think UNC could be a good fit there.
Yeah, because he can kind of create a little bit as in the pick and roll. I think he was like 93rd percentile in terms of pick and roll points per possession. But he's also kind of a pretty good rebounder, can shoot the ball. I think he makes sense. Justin Pierce, we mentioned a lot. Jahad Proctor, high point, can really score. Began his career at Iona. Very physical guard who can shoot the 3 a little bit when he gets going. His list per Goodman: Arizona, Maryland, Seton Hall, Nevada, but that's obviously old staff. Oklahoma State, Michigan, Murray State, Boston College. Probably going to be a high major guard who I think probably fits in as a 6th man. Sestina off the board to Kentucky. We touched on him in the preseason top 25s. Rajon Tucker, Brad, another guy that's definitely one to watch. You've touched on him a couple times. Freak athlete. I remember when Rajon Tucker left FGCU, he averaged like 7 and 6. I was like, that's gonna be like a really good mid-major player. I didn't think he'd be this good, but I was like, that's gonna be a guy who goes to another mid-major and plays and just didn't quite put it all together at Florida Gulf Coast, and that certainly worked out. Now he could pretty much go to any school in the country. And then
he's gonna be very highly touted. We mentioned on Jace Johnson a little bit. Stone Gettings was the first grad transfer off the board from Cornell to Arizona. He will, if not start, I mean, he's going to be an important part of a resurgent Arizona squad. The way it's currently built, we'll see who and which coaches are there for the start of the season. Also have Admon Gilder from Texas A&M, missed this year with injury, but I mean, he's been a starter on good Texas A&M teams, double-figure scorer, can shoot it off the ball like an undersized 2 guard. Alihan Demmer from Drexel, I think he's a 4-5. He has a pretty impressive list. I know Butler's after him. A few other high major schools as well.
Kid's very good.
Another guy who we don't have a list for yet, who's pretty good, Lamar Kimball. I mean, maybe that could be a fit for Gonzaga.
Not really a point guard. He's like a scorer.
Yeah, but he's a creator though.
That's true. That's what they need.
And at some point, I mean, you can poke holes through almost all these grad transfers. A lot of these guys are flawed, but if you need to fill a hole and you need something, you just got to suck it up and kind of grab it, you know?
Fair enough. Yeah. Sit out guys to watch. David Jenkins is probably the best name in my mind. Him or DJ Harvey. Jenkins can just absolutely score the basketball. I don't love him as much just because he doesn't really defend. He's very ball dominant, but I think in the right system he could be just he can score anywhere. He's not one of these like Kane Broom types who's going to score 8 a game on a high major team. Like I think he can be a legit 15 a game scorer at the high major level. He can just flat out go get one. He's one to watch. TJ Harvey has a pretty good list. He's a guy who I would love to pick up if I'm a high major school because you let him, you give him a year to learn a jumper. He's gonna be special.
Yeah, he's very. I mean, average double figures in the ACC as a sophomore. A couple of the guys, Justice Suing. I saw his list is a pretty good. A few. I think Miami was on it. From Cal, he's a sit one play two. Caleb Daniels from Tulane is an interesting guy in a similar vein, kind of a Eric Williams from Duquesne. Both guys were on under the radar A10 AAC teams, big scorers, but they could take a nice jump. Thomas Allen's off the board to NC State from Nebraska, undersized 2-guard shooter. He's a pretty good fit there. I mean, kind of overlap with Braxton Beverly. Jared Bynum from St. Joe's. He has 3 visits scheduled: Providence, Butler, and Seton Hall. I think Providence needs him the most out of those 3. So I mean, hopefully it goes to Providence, but that's an interesting list. It said Pitt and Arkansas also in the mix. Kim Lard from Iowa State, sit 1, play 2. Kind of overshadowed by Michael Jacobson this year. Missed start of the year with suspensions. But he's very good, and with a fresh start, he could really be an impact player. Yeah,
no, I would agree. He's got talent. He's a guy you could pick up and be really pleased. I'm trying to think of if there's any like low or mid major guys. Cole Molson from Canisius was one I'm thinking of. He can really get a bucket at 3 levels. I know Seton Hall was mentioned there. He took an official visit there. That would make sense. Like big physical guard. Who can really play. I think he'd be, a fine, good rotation player at a place like that. Joel Ntombwe is another name I don't think we touched on. He was the other guy I wanted to, he's very interesting skill set, can shoot the 3, 6'9", very athletic. 4-man, has some ball skills. I think he's a piece.
Yeah, seems like UConn's the leader there. Rutgers also in the mix. Another guy, Darius McNeil from Cal, double-figure scorer. Former Iowa State commit. He's visiting a bunch of Texas schools. I think Baylor, TCU, maybe Houston too. I saw Anthony DeRuggi from Louisiana Tech. I saw a couple draft people, kind of pumping him up a little bit. He's visiting Florida, I believe, over the weekend. Jalen Fisher's still sitting out there. He would be he's a forgotten man. Not sure what's going on there. Desmond Cambridge, I've seen a few positive things about from Brown. Chase Audidge from William Mary.
Jalen Fisher for Louisville.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'm not sure what his waiver situation is. If he gets a waiver and he can go to like Gonzaga or Louisville, I mean that would be an absolute home run.
I mean, if he's healthy. The thing is, like, are you going to get 10 games of him or 30?
And they moved him off the ball this year, which I always thought he was a really solid point guard. I guess I didn't watch enough TCU. He was always impressive when I watched him, but they moved him off the ball, gave Alex Robinson the full-time point guard keys. I'm not a huge Robinson guy, but I think you could definitely have Fisher as your point guard. You could do a lot worse there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I know there was talk that he was going to go down a level when he left, but we'll see if that transpires. I think a lot of times you say that, and then the opportunity comes up that you just can't pass up. So definitely a guy I'm watching. We've got a lot of transfers definitely to look at over the next couple of weeks, and we'll bring you a lot of that coverage. We still got coaches to move. That St. John's hire will be certainly interesting, but figured we'd give you guys a pod this week to kind of just touch on a lot of stuff we haven't gotten to in the last month because we've been so busy talking about the tournament. So appreciate you guys all listening. We'll see you all at some point in the end of this week, early next week, to talk about all this other stuff because there's a lot of player movement to go on that will change the landscape of this season. in November, starting right now. So thanks for listening. Have a great night.